What's good in the hood, YouTube? This is Crazy Samurai 71 here, bringing you guys another video. Today I'm bringing you guys a video on Power Rangers Super Ninja Steel, episode 18 of the main episodes. You may be thinking to yourself, wasn't there an episode last week? Yes, there was. There was an episode that was a Halloween holiday episode. I didn't review that because typically the holiday episodes tend to not be anything worth reviewing. I'm considering doing it for the Christmas one, but last week I really needed to not review it just because I had some other stuff going on. But I know exactly what happened in that episode, and it was purely filler. I mean, there's nothing there that if you didn't watch that episode, you wouldn't know what's going on in this one. This episode keeps going with the story, and this one actually is bringing us right towards the end of the season. Yes, it's finally progressing that plot and bringing us towards the end. So again, there are two more episodes that are regular episodes, and then there's the Christmas episode, which I'm considering watching because there are rumors going around that maybe some character will show up that people have been hoping to see, someone like Sledge or maybe the Green Ninja Steel Ranger being a thing. Again, both of those things are unclear, but it is a possibility on both ends. We'll have to wait and see for sure, though. Anyway, let's get started with this episode. So the episode is called Magic Misfire, which pretty much sums up this episode in a lot of ways of what happened story-wise regarding the Rangers as people. There are certain things that come from this, and the story again does progress. We also see a new mode for Preston, and we get to see a few other things happen that were worthwhile and noteworthy. So the episode begins with us seeing that apparently Tynamon reveals his true secret, his big secret about himself, because there was a secret that was hinted about when Tynamon was first introduced, but it wasn't said exactly what it was. And it makes a lot of sense, and the episode even has it where the Rangers at one point basically describe why he has his name, which is pretty interesting. So the big secret for Tynamon, which is revealed right at the beginning, is that Tynamon is actually a tiny man inside of a machine robot version, a bigger version of himself. So the thing is that he wants to be made big by Madame Odious so that he can, fit in with everyone. It's kind of interesting that they decided to go this route with this story, but it actually does connect well with how it's supposed to work. And anyway, it was interesting to find that out, of course. And he then is put on his last mission, which is to go out and find Mick. As to why he needs Mick, we don't find that out till the very end of the episode. But what happens is that he goes out in search of him. What we do see in the meantime is that the Rangers are at the school. We see that Preston is leading his magic club, where we see a number of people are practicing different spells. Most people are failing, but he's still trying to be a teacher's support for people that want to do magic. Victor and Monty show up. Monty does a magic spell on Victor where he makes it so that whenever he hears the words chicken, he will become a chicken. So that's what happens. He says chicken, and suddenly it happens where he is he becomes a chicken and he starts to knock over things. The teacher for the class, Mr. Lint, comes in, and he's not very happy with the fact that his room's a mess, and he was willing to let them use the room, but he was not willing for them to leave a huge mess because it's the drama room, and there's tons of props and clothing and stuff, so of course there's going to be a potential mess if anything gets knocked over. So what happens is that at one point we end up seeing that there's also this bee which Victor goes after, and that is part of the reason why he freaks out and stuff. And so the thing is that he tries to go after it, and they try to get rid of the bee. We end up seeing that Preston tries to use a spell to make the bee fall asleep, but what happens is that instead of making the bee fall asleep, it misfires, which is where the name comes from, because it's a magic misfiring that goes, instead of towards the bee, it goes actually towards Mr. Lin. So he ends up falling asleep in the classroom. The principal comes in and decides that she wants to fire him for sleeping at work, which would make sense in most job situations. I mean, you're really not supposed to sleep during your time at work, in any kind of job, typically. So Anyway, what ends up happening is that you know, he's about to get fired and everything, and you know, Preston feels bad because he put him in this situation. We do end up seeing that he goes to speak to the other Rangers, which the Rangers are practicing this 5 elemental prison spell, which is, you know, formation, which is this thing where they use the 5 elements that they have to create this you know, big barrier that keeps people within it, which is something to note. So what we do end up seeing from here is that they end up hearing from Preston about his current situation, and they start to try to get signatures from students so that maybe that will cause the teacher to want to rehire him based on the number of signatures they get. So they split up into groups of 2, and they come back each with a certain number of signatures, totaling about 126 signatures, which is not bad. It's a decent number for average, you know, high school. Again, I don't know how many students were in that high school, but it's a pretty good number. I mean, more than 100 students is always a sizable number. So what we do end up seeing is that Mr. Lin is very happy with the fact that he's getting this praise. I mean, you know, he appreciates it. He feels really grateful for the actions that they're doing. And, you know, he knows that Preston is really caring about him because he does hear his voice at certain points. So the principal does not accept that the signatures right away. She's actually against it at first and still says that, like, no teacher's really allowed to do such a thing as sleeping in during the time that they're working. And that's a big problem. So the thing is that he's going to have to be fired, and the Rangers are still trying to figure out what they can do. Eventually, what we do end up seeing is that little Tynamon ends up going into this building, which Mick ends up following him into, and little Tynamon actually uses his magic to brainwash Mick. Now, from here, we don't see Mick for quite some time, but we know that he interacted with Tynamon. We don't know what will happen, though. So what ends up happening from here, though, is that the Rangers are, you know, continuing trying to figure out different things. We do end up seeing it where Tynamon asks Madame Odious, like, when am I going to be turned big? I got you, Mick. When can I know the master plan? And the thing is that she says, in time. I don't want to spoil things now. And so he put back in his robot body again. And what we do end up seeing is that eventually, at one point, and I don't remember the exact order of this, but what ends up happening is the Rangers end up having to fight Brax, which is very interesting just because Brax seems so out of nowhere. Like, in other words, we had that whole episode where he was presumed destroyed and all that, and yet he's back. And it's just sort of like, why is he returning after being gone for a couple episodes? You know what I mean? Like, it's sort of like, if he was meant to be this bigger, major monster that really his introduction was not anything that great in reality, it just seems so out of place. Like, it just sort of seemed like here's a way to throw him in there without really, like, creating substance around him, which is basically what this episode did for Brax's character. His character had very little substance overall, because what happens is the Rangers end up fighting him. What we do end up seeing is that they use that they use the elemental barrier again, and this time they actually trap Brody and Brax inside the barrier to keep them in it. And what happens is that rather than it working to their advantage, Brax manages to damage Brody's power star so that he can't use it. So it's very similar to when Foxatron attacked the Ranger's Zord Stars, where they had to wait for it to recover. So in this case, he's without a power star right now. He can't transform. So we end up seeing that the Rangers do retreat. They don't know where Mick is, which is something that's interesting to note. But what ends up happening is that Brody has to have his power star fixed. In the meantime, they end up mentioning some things having to do with the principal, and if only she had made a mistake. And then that makes Preston come up with this brilliant solution, which is interesting, where he decides to create this convoluted scheme to get back Mr. Lynch's job, which involves putting the principal to sleep while she's copying some papers. And then what happens is that she's asleep, and then they manage to steal her keys and send them out to the school, make it so that it lands on the floor right next to Mr. Lynch where Haley is talking to him. And then she mentions, hey, look, are those your keys? I guess you must have forgotten them. And then he's like, no, that's the principal's keys. So then that convinces him to go back into the school to check on her and give her back the keys, where he ends up finding out that she's actually sleeping, and the photocopy machine has been blasting out tons and tons of sheets of paper. So at that point, what happens is that Mr. Lynch wakes her up, and they begin to work on cleaning up the place, and she realizes that she made a grave mistake. If I could fall asleep, then really I shouldn't blame you for one mistake like that, because it's the same idea. And she also praises Preston for his petitions, and it's very forced acting in this scene. Like, it's extremely forced. And again, there have been a lot of those cases in this season, but this one was a big example of that, where he just gets back his job. Things are good, and they're grateful for all that. So yeah, mission accomplished that way. The Rangers then eventually finally have their battle with Tynamon. This battle is interesting in the sense is that it leads to them finding out the identity of the secret of Tynamon, which is that he's his name originates from him being a tiny man in a machine, so Tynamon. So tiny man, basically. Interesting observation, and it kind of freaks out Brody when he actually comes back with his powers. What we do also see is that this episode has Preston using the Lion Fire armor. So this is his one episode where he gets to use it. So we've seen all 4 guys use it. Red, gold, blue, and yellow have used it. As far as pink and white, they're not going to unless they do something brand new. The reason why I say it is because in Japan, those 2 never had it in the actual show. The only time that they actually used the Lion Fire armor was in a stage show, which they do towards the end of the seasons, and sometimes even in the middle, but mainly during the end of the seasons they do these stage shows where they maybe use exclusive suits that will only be seen in those stage shows. Sometimes they may use them in some other places, but typically they'll use some exclusive ones and then ones that we've seen before as well. They do that with Kamen Rider if you watch the Kamen Rider show as well, but that is something to note. So as far as white, a Lion Fire White Ranger form or a pink one, very unlikely, but still something to note. So we do end up seeing that. We also see that Levi uses the gold superstar armor, and the 2 of them fight and manage to defeat Tynamon. Then what happens is that Tynamon is finally made big, which makes him really happy. The Rangers end up summoning the Ninja Fusion Zord, which is the combination of the Ninja Steel and the Bull Rider Megazords to combine together, and they end up getting into a battle with that. We do see the Lion Fire Blue Ranger in the cockpit, which is good. We do see eventually that they switch from Ninja Fusion to Ninja Ultra Zord, which is worth noting. And what also ends up happening is that after they've used both those forms, we do have Brody doing the finishing attack, while also Preston does an attack on top of the Ultra Zord, which is good. And they do manage to defeat Tynamon for good. So now he is completely destroyed. He shouldn't be returning at all. What we do end up seeing following this is that at the school, they're happy because the teachers got, Mr. Lynch got back his job. He's grateful to Preston. He's willing to let him go back in his class. And then what happens is that at one point we end up seeing that some of the other Rangers are eating like sandwiches, and the sandwich that Brody had was a chicken sandwich, and when he says chicken, it triggers Victor's response again, where he begins to act like a chicken. and suddenly Monty tries to stop him, which is kind of good to see, and they laugh a little bit. But following this, we end up seeing a continuation of the story, because they don't end it there like they typically do. They would typically end it with some sort of joke at the expense of Victor and Monty. It doesn't end there. It actually goes to the Rangers having to go back to the base, where they end up getting a message from Mick. Mick ends up reporting and basically telling the Rangers that he is going to be going back to the Lion Galaxy because his mother and father are not feeling well, and he wants to go take care of them. The way that he talks, though a lot of his voice, the way he speaks, and a number of things that he does sound somewhat similar, there is a sense that things are all a little bit different in his personality and his voice. So he doesn't seem the same, at least to me. Again, the Rangers don't necessarily make any observation of it, although they do. It does sound like they find it odd that he suddenly has this happening, and like they had no prior knowledge and he's been gone this whole time. But it is something to note. But then following this, we end up seeing on the Warrior Dome that finally Madame Odious reveals her goal, which is that she created this cannon to create a mind control. She created a mind control device that worked on Mick, and it was a small one that worked on one person. Problem is that she doesn't know how to make something that's really big, like as big as an actual Zord or a gigantic monster. And so what happens is that the reason why she decided to use the brain control device on Mick was because she wanted him to make the brain control device that would be big enough to blast the entire Earth. So that was really Madame Odious's goal this whole entire time, to mind control all the people of Earth. As far as things go from here, we don't really know yet, other than those that have seen spoilers, which I do know about what's going to happen, and I don't want to reveal anything in too much detail about what will happen. But yes, we are getting towards the end of the season. Next episode should finally have it where the Rangers actually get to see Mick mind controlled. I can tell you that much right now. We should be seeing it, I believe, next episode, that official confirmation for the Rangers. It won't wait till episode 20. It will happen next episode, but we still will see it, I believe, in 20. But you'll see. There's a lot more going on there that I don't want to disclose for the next episode, but definitely worth looking into. And yeah, so those are the things that are going on. Again, for those that weren't able to watch the Halloween episode, it was fine. I got to see some of it. I know what's going on there, but I just decided against reviewing it because I just had a lot going on and I needed to get some other stuff done on my own time. And personally, I was kind of grateful to have that time to spend doing that rather than this for that 1 week, just because it wasn't an episode that was part of like the core episodes of the season. The Christmas episode, though, I'm still considering, just because of the fact that it will be one that will be more significant and more important overall. Potentially, at least. I mean, it's not going to be like a major episode, but it will likely be more important than, say, the Halloween one was. So just keep that in mind. Otherwise, that's about it for me, guys. So I'd love to know your guys' opinions about this episode. Did you enjoy it? Did you think it was good? What are your guys' thoughts on Mick being mind controlled? What did you think of Preston getting the Lion Fire armor? Were you glad to see that? Do you think that there's any other major things that are missing right now that will be happening in the future? What things are you hoping to see in the next 2 episodes if you don't know? And if you do know, please don't spoil them for anyone, but I would love to know what you guys are thinking. And just in general, are you looking forward to Super Ninja Steel being done, and are you looking forward to Beast Morphers happening? Apparently, very recently, the official confirmation happened regarding who will be the Dark Buster character, which is the evil ranger for Power Rangers Beast Morphers. And it was exactly who people expected, which is the character Blaze, pretty much has been confirmed. So that is something to note, and it was something that people were expecting. And otherwise, I am looking forward to seeing that and more. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. So until then, guys, I am Crazy Sandwich 71, and goodbye, guys.